Badger fans, we got one of your favorites on the show. It's Brian Smith time. We're going to talk about a couple weapons on the outside. He talks about receivers a lot. Let's talk Cam Miller. Let's talk Joseph Griffin, what he thinks of those new ads, plus some thoughts on upcoming 25 visitors, all that and more in today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this part of your day. Thank you for making this community part of your day. I appreciate you. Let's go. Let's talk about it. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Download our Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's bring Brian in. Let's talk recruiting. Listen, you talk weapons, get receivers, right? Like, it's our constant thing. They added a couple. I'm very curious to get your thoughts on both of them, the transfer portal, Joseph Griffin, and the 2025 commit with Cameron Miller. Let's start with Cameron Miller, 6 foot, about 170 pounds, speedy guy, high three-star composite. What did you see on film with Cameron Miller, the receiver?
I think Miller is a 4-star player. Personally, I think he could play corner. I think he can play slot, or eventually at 15 more pounds, he can play on the outside. But most importantly, he's a guy that just makes plays with his feet, and you don't have to coach him to get extra yards. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess Wisconsin was not towards the national top 50 in yards after catch the last few years. He's the kind of guy that can change that. And if you're going to win big games, eventually your guy's got to be better than the other team's guy. This is a kid that plays in New Jersey and dominates, runs away from people, makes people look bad in space. This is exactly what Wisconsin needs.
Well, I think I've asked you this before, and I'm trying to remember who it was, but New Jersey football, what level are we talking about there in general? Like, who is he playing against?
Well, I mean, New Jersey is very broad in terms of a term because there's South Jersey, like North Jersey, there's a small section that's really good. A few parochial schools, they got a private league. They all cheat like crazy recruiting kids. It's not any secret. And there's a few good public schools. I don't think he plays as quite as good a competition as some of the others, but like, it's still good enough. And like, he's running away from guys like they're standing still. You can tell with his motion, the way he runs, he's either run track or he could. He's kind of like the point guard in basketball that can get to the rim whenever he wants. Those guys never go out of style in any sport. So play shortstop in baseball, something like that. But the competition's solid, but he wins the battle. Like, if you're going to play non-elite competition, you better dominate it, right? He does. That's the key. Like, he takes the ball away from the other team, makes guys miss, and creates big plays with his feet.
Yeah, and to your point, when you say non-dominant competition, he's certainly not playing in North Dakota. Like we talked about the linebacker hype. Like, this is solid competition he's playing against.
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
It's not like it's the Miami Public League or the Dallas Public League. You get it, but at the same time, there are kids on the field that can run. So he's just the best athlete out there. And that's the number one barometer that Wisconsin needs to get better. I say it all the time. Outside the numbers, Wisconsin's got problems. They're slowly getting better. They kind of solved it last year at corner with the really good corner group. They're trending that way at receiver, and this is a great start.
Yeah, and one of the things you hit on this, talking about the yards after catch, certainly you are correct going out on that limb that Wisconsin has not been near the upper echelon of college football in that category. It's been a struggle. One of the things Coach Longo, the offensive coordinator, has talked about is his favorite 80-yard play is a 20-yard catch becomes a 60-yard run after catch. This feels like the type of player that fits into that mold.
If he catches the over route and it's accurately placed, that safety that comes across his face better make the tackle. If not, you can strike up the band.
And, the quickness and acceleration as well. I think that translates to the fact that he used to be a corner, has still some of that positional versatility. He's not just a burner. Like, the acceleration, I felt like, was almost the most impressive part of his game. It's top speed pretty quickly with him.
That's more important that, okay, well, the kid runs 10-3, 800. Great. How often do you run 100 meters? Never. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to change direction, suddenness, the ability to stop, the ability to set up your moves, the understanding that the guys coming at you, they're pretty good too. You better be ready to make guys miss. But if you have to take on somebody, how to get down, how to get out of the understanding of football, like, he's got feel to go with the speed. Lou Holtz had a saying a long time ago, because it doesn't matter how fast you're going if you're going the wrong direction. He's not one of those guys. So, look, speed is great, but it's got to be maximized or at least close to it. That's something he has. And I think Wisconsin, they just don't get enough of these guys. He has to stay healthy. He's got to come in and make an impact, make it cool to go play receiver at this program.
That's a great Lou Holtz quote, by the way. I love that. Where does he play, do you think? You think he's a slot guy, or do you think if he gets maybe an inch bigger or so, he could play on the outside a little bit?
They'll move him all over the place. He'll play in the backfield. He'll be a motion guy. He'll be an H-back that they do trick plays with, fake end arounds, throw a bomb to the tight end, whatever. But starting out, the easy spot is slot, and the reason for that is very simple. He's not the biggest guy. He's kind of slight. As a slot, you're off the line of scrimmage. They can't bump you. And if you don't get hands on this guy at the line and you miss and you get out of step with him, he gets that shoulder next to you, you're in trouble. Outside, they can bump you because you're on the line of scrimmage. That's a different deal. So I would anticipate that the only time he'll play outside originally is if he's on the side with the tight end and he can still play off. They don't want hands on him. He's got to get up over 180 pounds because even college corners, a lot of those guys bench 300 pounds. They get their hands on him, they're going to eat him alive at the line of scrimmage. So he needs to gain some weight, eat some peanut butter, get some of that Wisconsin cheese, and get to work.
This is a tough question to maybe answer, but certainly Cameron Miller is not in the Marvin Harrison Jr. class, anything like that. He's not that type of guy. Right. Is this the tier receiver Wisconsin needs to be recruiting in, or do they still need to get better here, knowing that it's really hard to get that alpha guy?
That really kind of depends on how the coaching staff does this. Like Jeremiah Smith made a business decision. He told me that he wanted to go somewhere that he knew he'd be developed. Okay. He was number one player in the country. There was a reason for it. And it's kind of hard to fault somebody going to Ohio State if they're a receiver. I get it. But that, it's kind of like saying you want to go to Georgia because you're a defensive lineman. Okay, well, it's not that hard. I understand. But there has to be a happy medium. And with offense, you can dictate more. Meaning you can take guys that maybe like Jeremiah Smith is as close to a lock to being a top 5 pick long-term as you can get. 6'3", 210, and he runs away from everybody. Okay, that works. But you can take a 5'11", 190 kid at the college level with all the rules, with the way the RPO game is, that you get 3 yards as a lineman in the RPO game in college. You get 1 in pro. I mean, it's not even remotely fair at the college level. So you could do all kinds of things with him, make him bigger than he is, especially with Wisconsin's running game. Play action pass with a guy that fast. College DBs compared to the NFL, it's the biggest adjustment. Like DBs in the NFL is way better. So he's going to be open a lot. They can find ways to make him a 60-catch guy for maybe 1,000 yards because he's going to catch 2 or 3 70-yard balls. That's fine. The question is, are the guys around him, can they get enough volume to make their system work? That's my bigger concern. If Jeremiah Smith transfers to Wisconsin, I'll go ahead and say that I'll speak for Fickell, they'll take it. But that's not going to happen. So they got to find way with volume and speed and making it difficult, kind of like Texas Tech did when they ran the pure, just wide open offense stuff like, and then mix in the run game. They got to be a little more balanced than Texas Tech was, obviously, but you got to have numbers. So you're constantly rotating guys in and out that are fast. This is player one. They need about 4 of those. That's just reality. So that way, if guy gets hurt, you're not back to square peg 1. You know what I mean? You got to have multiple guys in the queue at all times.
Stocking the talent. And you have to do that cycle after cycle after cycle. It's something we talked about with quarterback too. You have to continue to add into that room with guys like this. Very well said as always. We're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. We're going to come back with Brian. We're going to talk about Joseph Griffin Jr. Joseph Griffin Jr., the portal commit out of Boston College, and the receiver into the room, different body type. We're going to talk about Brian, or his thoughts on Joseph coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. FanDuel is there for your futures, your parlays, your teasers, your spreads, whatever it is. It's fast, it's easy, it's simple. It is where we go on the Locked On Network because of the simplicity. We don't need confusion. If you win, you should just be able to get your money out easily. That's what FanDuel is here for. Plus, new customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's free money or bonus money to use on your parlays, your teasers, your spreads, whatever it is. That's over at FanDuel.com/LockedOn, the official sports book of the Locked On Network. and where I go to make all my bets because it's fast, it's easy, and it's simple. Simple is great in today's life. Today's episode is also brought to you by our incredible friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is our college football recruiting's official sponsor because they're all about talent acquisition, and that's what we're talking about here. So we're talking about when we talk recruiting, it's talent acquisition. LinkedIn is your recruiting expert on the corporate side. Find the right people, get them in your door the first time, simply and easily. It leaves all the riffraff at the door. They have screening questions, so you can set up questions that people have to kind of get through to get to your job interview, right? It gets rid of some of the stuff that doesn't need to walk in your door, and it saves their time. It saves your time. Time is money. With more time, you can watch more Locked On Badgers. It's win, win, win. We all come out ahead. That's what LinkedIn does for you. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. They are awesome. I use them. My company uses them. You will not regret it. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Let's get Brian back in here. Talk a little bit about the transfer receiver. Brian, one of the things we've talked about is this is a different body type, right? A lot of the Badger receivers we've talked about, 5'11", 5'10". Griffin comes in 6'3", 200 pounds, college experience, former four-star prospect out of Massachusetts. Thoughts on the Badgers adding Joseph Griffin into the room?
Well, it's interesting because Joseph listed based, for whatever it's worth, I'm looking at Pro Football Focus, 6'3", 199. I was just talking about Miller was, he's just 170-ish, let's just say. He can't play boundary right now unless he just wants to be mugged. This is a kid at 200 pounds who's been through the rigors of a college weight program. He could play flanker for you. He could play boundary. And he's a guy that can help you in the run game, going to catch more 50-50 balls. He's the polar opposite. I said a minute ago, you needed to stack talent. We also got to have different body types. Excuse me. And to be honest with you, when was the last time they had a guy that, he could run, but 200 pounds, he can make plays down the field. Mm-hmm. That makes the safety think about what he's going to do. It makes the linebacker, it just changes your game. So that's a player they need to have all the time. And you need to stack it. I get that. But at least Wisconsin's getting into that realm. Getting the big receivers is hard. The 6'3", 200-pound guy. There aren't many of them. But if you don't, it changes your run game and your pass game both. So there's so many avenues that you can be better at because he's going to help in run blocking and everything else. So this is a good pickup for them, and it's long overdue.
Well, and one of the things I've talked about this a lot, and I'm curious your take on it. There's a lot of fans who want home runs in the transfer portal, right? The USC defensive lineman decommit. So this guy is 5-star. Caleb Downs from Bama, right, going to Ohio State. That's a home run in the portal. But there's a lot of singles and doubles you can hit that can help your roster on the edges, right, in the aggregate. This feels like you're adding a different body type. He's spent 2 years in Boston College. He has 6 career touchdowns. It doesn't knock your socks off, but this feels like a move that in a certain game could help you in this certain situation. And it feels like a single or double.
Well, like I was just looking at some of his numbers on PFF. They threw the ball down the field to him. His target rate now, the quarterback situation in BC leaves a lot to be desired. But it was 45% because they threw so many times 10 or more yards down the field. He wasn't catching the 3-yard hitch. He was trying to, go do the deep over route, the post, the sluggo, stuff like that, 15, 20 yards down the field. And he's able to make some of those plays, again, without the greatest of all quarterbacks and offensive lines. They were bad. I think with the right coaching around him, Longo's a good coach, obviously. This is a guy that can go get you 50 balls and be an impressive player in the run game and help you in a lot of different ways. Short yardage, play him at the H-back or something. Fake the block for a sec, go out in the front. There's all kinds of ways you can use him because of his size. This is going to be a good fit for them.
Yeah, and by the way, you tell me they didn't tell him that? He didn't look at that depth chart and say, oh, there's no 6'3" receivers, 6'4" receivers here. Maybe I could get in on that. Let's talk a couple 25 targets. A couple guys coming up on official visits. I want your take on Jayden Loftin, defensive lineman, 6'5", 245-ish pounds. Offer list, Penn State's in on him. Tennessee, 5 or 6 other schools are in on him as well. Thoughts on Jayden Loftin?
That is the kind of guy that they don't normally get. The pure length. He can be somewhat of a speed rusher, but he can play 4-eye in a 3-4 defense somewhere down the line. Like he'll add some weight. Right now in that kind of defense, he could play a stand-up. He's probably a strong side end, I'm guessing, long-term, but might be able to play some weak side. And Wisconsin's scheme is very multiple anyway. Versatility, athletic, pass rusher, length. This is the kind of kid that the SEC and Big Ten usually get. Now, Wisconsin, they need to get at least one or two of these a year, and they certainly came up short last year. Very important recruit. How many other guys off the top of your head do they have on the board like Loftin? Any?
Not too many.
The
I
body
mean,
style is important. Very important.
Yeah, they just lost a defensive lineman, Solstead, to Notre Dame. Like the Badgers were high favorites, but Solstead's not this type of player. He's a different type of guy on the defense line. And Lofton's interesting, right? Because you mentioned he a lot of clips of him standing up. I think he's going to have his hand in the dirt more in college when he puts the weight on. But he has, I thought, really great hands, a variety. It looks like he's been coached. He's able to beat that blocker a couple different ways. He feels like the type of guy who can impact the quarterback and impact the pass game.
Long arms, can jump up. He's an athlete, kind of the guy that could be, Division II basketball player or something. I think he's just the kind of guy that, honestly, Cincinnati was getting for a while. But the upside is so high. That's why you see Tennessee, Penn State, etc. It's not a finished product, but these are the like Joe Pa used to take guys like this at Penn State all the time. Redshirt second year, starts playing third year, like, oh, who's that guy? Then they end up in the NFL draft as a third-round pick or something. He has that kind of frame where he could be 270 and be your strong side end. Those guys are hard to find, man. And again, the length and everything just fits with the upper echelon of college football, and Wisconsin needs more of that desperately.
There was a clip on his film, too. I just want to finish with this because I made a note of it. He tracked down a running back 30 yards down the field. Right.
He's an athlete now. That's a good football player.
And the motor, right? That's the other thing. You've talked about this before. Like you can see motor on film.
Can't hide it. Either you do or you don't.
You can see lack of it on film as well.
Don't get me started on that. That's a bad day.
We're going to take one more quick break. A couple more 25 prospects I want to talk about with Brian, including a tight end that I think is really interesting. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Gametime. Listen, if you want to get to an event, sporting event, concert, theater, whatever it is, you have to check out our friends over at Gametime. Gametime is the best place to buy your tickets. Unless you want to try to sneak in and scale the walls. And listen, I'm too old for that. That was young Ryan. Adult Ryan with children can't be going to jail for sneaking into a sporting event. So I'm going to go to Gametime. I'm going to buy my tickets. I'm going to get the best seats at the best price with the least amount of logistical pain and pre-planning, because that's who I am at my core. I'm going to go to Gametime. They have flash deals. The prices get better the closer the event gets. You get pictures of the seats before you sit down, so you know exactly what those sight lines are going to be like when you're in Camp Randall, when you're in the Kohl Center, whatever it is. Go over to Gametime, download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. You will not regret it. It is the ultimate and best place to buy tickets to whatever type of entertainment you're trying to get to. Let's get Brian back on, continue this awesome conversation as always. Brian making us smarter. Brian, I want us to talk about the tight end. And I'm not 100% sure on the first name, but Nizyi Davis, I think.
That's how I would pronounce it.
Okay. That's what I'm going to roll with. Nizyi Davis, 6'6", listed 220, Indianapolis, 3-star composite. He's kind of a weapon in the passing game. I like what he brings there.
I'm from that area. My cousin went to that high school. That's a program that's always got players, basketball, football, whatever. He is an athlete. He's the kind of guy, I bet you he's on the basketball team where they want him to be, throw him alley-oops. He's the guy that's going to run the seam, and he's the traditional flex tight end that you've seen over the last 10, 15 years that's taken off. He's going to make plays that, okay, do we put a linebacker on him or a safety? He's in between. He's too tall for either. He's too athletic for a linebacker more often than not. And the safety is definitely not going to be able to power over him because he's already 220. After a year in the weight program, he's going to weigh 240, 245. I think he's underrated. It's surprising to me he's not ranked a little higher because Indianapolis got pretty good football. And he's playing in the big school division. So I don't know. Like he looks like an athlete to me and almost like he's just a big wide receiver, really. That's a good guy. If Wisconsin can get kids like this is another way that you can make up for the ability that, hey, we're not going to get the exact same guys Michigan is or Penn State. You can beat them outside the numbers like this. That's fine. be kind of interesting. Wisconsin turned into that kind of program.
Well, the film, one of the things I thought was interesting with this film too is he really shows a willingness to block. A lot of finesse kind of flex tight ends, they don't want to. There's a couple decleaters he lays on people. Now he has to get bigger, right? And there's some technique stuff, like he's a little raw in spots. But I like the physics. I like the willingness to just throw his body around. I think that's an important aspect of a young player.
Unfortunately, most flex tight ends are playing it because they can't block very well and/or they don't even have much interest. This is a kid that's a little more physical. Being from the league that he's in on the northeast side of Indianapolis, I'm not surprised. And to be honest with you, that's kind of what I expect out of that area. But you have to play it at some point. You got to be able to play it as an H-back at least to be more of an all-around player. We'll have to see how big he gets, but I think it'll transition well. Just needs more weight to take on guys on 3rd and 1. Athletically, he's good to go. So he'll block down and do things in the secondary and guys in space. Need to see him get into the box and beat up some people too, to be the complete player, because he's got the athleticism to do it. And I think 240 is conservatively where he's going to be.
Well, if you get to 240 I think he's probably like a 4'6" guy, 4'6", 5" guy with that frame, 6'6", long arms, good hands, good run after the catch ability.
Yeah.
That it does feel a little underranked. Like maybe you're going to see a bump there potentially, because it seems like the athletic tools check the boxes for the position.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the key. This is a kid that if it didn't work out at flex, and I don't know how physical he is to this point, but he could be a rush end. Those are the kind of guys you're looking for. 6'5", 220 that can run. Let's see what happens. And if you can do that, then you're in a good spot. So, look, he's going to give you options that many teams would love to have. If you can get him on your campus at Indianapolis, you take him. That's how I look at it.
Love it. One more player I want to talk about Logan Powell, offensive lineman. He's listed an offensive tackle. I kind of wonder if he's more of a guy you can move around to spots out of Phoenix, Arizona, composite high 3-star kid. Really good offer list, though. Either official offers or schools kind of sniffing around there. Oregon, Michigan, Florida State, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Bama have all been at least listed as interest. Thoughts on Logan Powell out of Phoenix, Arizona?
First off, he plays at Brophy Prep. That's a really, really good program. Elite high school. He's going to be a little more advanced going into the college level than most guys. Doesn't matter which spot. They corner, quarterback, it doesn't make any difference. They're well coached. Secondly, he's playing against pretty good competition. Phoenix pretty good. And then finally, he's got good feet. Is he massive? No, he's 275-ish, I would guess, maybe 285. But I think he could play any 5 spots on the line athletically. The power is the question. Can he be a right tackle, right guard? Maybe not. But he could be your starting center or left tackle or something too. So good feet is where offensive linemen kind of are starting to be built. And he's got that. He just has to add weight. I liked how he got after it too. He's an aggressive kid, likes to drive block, keeps his feet moving after contact. Pretty good punch. Just, again, needs to get bigger.
Yeah, I thought that's a really interesting point, because one of the things I wrote down was, listen, every high school offensive lineman we've ever talked about, we could talk on that play. I think he needs to drop the hips a little bit more, get a little lower. It feels like, and you mentioned it, he does a pretty good job of already playing with some of those coaching points in the back of the head, and that must come from that school and that program.
Yeah, look, it's different. O-line and quarterback are played mentally, and to a certain degree, the free safety or the middle linebacker, because they got to make checks. Offensive linemen have to play as one. He's just at a program where it's important to win at football. It matters at that school. So I want, especially lineman or quarterback, I want my guys to come from those kind of programs. Like, you don't want to take a quarterback from a program that just went 2-6. You know what I mean? Like that's an important thing. O-line's similar. So being at Brophy will help him no matter where he goes, Wisconsin or otherwise, and he just plays with a chip on his shoulder. Love that about an offensive lineman.
How important is it to get a certain number of kids, maybe every cycle, every other cycle, from schools like that, where football just friggin' matters, and it's built into the DNA?
It's everything. Why do you think the schools where I live win so much? Like, I went to a spring practice at a high school recently. There was a 1A program, but they might have the best player in the country. It matters. The entire community knows who that kid is, no matter where he's at. It matters. That's going to carry over everything that he does. So you gotta recruit kids like that. I know Bill McCartney, when he built Colorado, recruited a lot of the elite programs in the state of California and slowly built that program. They were terrible when he got. They were terrible. Took him 5 years, but they started getting the elite LA kids, got a few Detroit kids, got a few New Orleans kids, and then just kind of poked around Texas. Next thing you know, they won a national title. So you have to be able to get players that believe in the system that you're running and are going to grind and go through it. If you don't, you'll never build a championship level team.
Culture matters, especially in football.
Oh, yeah.
He is Brian Smith at FBScout_Florida. That is Locked On's recruiting insider. Brian, thank you as always, my friend, for stopping by and making us a little smarter.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
We'll talk later.